Welcome back to Visited by Voices Live on Monday. A lot of you have been waiting a long time for this, and we'll get to why you've been waiting a long time for this in a little bit. But I am joined today by Jonathon Lundy. How are you, Jonathon?
I'm great, man. Thanks for having me on. Been looking forward to this for a while.
Yeah, so how did this all come about? Maybe I think you could tell us in your own words.
Well, we were in one of Piz's monthly Patreon chats a couple months back, and you let slip, which I was just getting introduced to your channel at the time. May have been a very well-known fact, but I just didn't know that you do not like the James Cameron classic that is Aliens.
That is true. And so basically, at the very last thing that happened in that broadcast is you stopped the presses to challenge me to a debate.
I did.
And then a lot of things in life intervened, and a while passed. And I was consistently getting questioned about when that was going to happen and whether I was ducking it. But
I did put that out there on the podcast. I'm just going to put that out there. There was a couple times I was like, Lauren's ducking me. He doesn't want to get proved wrong. He doesn't want to eat some crow. So I did put that out there.
Crow is delicious, but you got to roast it at 420. That's the problem. People do it at too low of a temperature. You don't want it wet at all. It's one of those birds that you need dry.
Wrapped in bacon.
Anything wrapped in bacon pretty much is the food of the gods. At any rate, so I've always come to this weird place when we discuss the Aliens movies, the franchise, because to say that Aliens is not a film I enjoy is, well, it's far beyond just not a popular opinion. A lot of people say things like, this is one of the best films ever made, or this is one of the best films in the genre, at the very least. And I take exception to that. And my affirmative statement is that I don't care what people like. People can talk about what their favorite films are. And I will never have a disagreement with you. I want you to love what you love every day of the week, and I want you to be passionate about all those things. But when you say best, now that means something a little bit different, and that's where my contention leads me. So how did you first come to know James Cameron's Aliens?
Well, it was actually much later in life for me. I was in my early 20s, and I'd seen the original movie. And that's one of my favorite films of all time. I do want to start off by that. I do not think that Aliens is a better film than Ridley Scott's Alien.
So that's just establishing that you're sane.
Yeah, well, yeah, for sure. But I saw it and I thought it was the logical sequel that needed to be made to that movie. I enjoyed it. Like I said, I can't say it's the best film in the series. It is the best film outside of that first film. And I'm kind of curious where you are with it as well. How bad do you hate it? Is it as bad as 3 and Resurrection?
Well, I love 3.
Wow.
3 is a whole lot closer to the original in my ranking. In fact, it is the second best in the series in my estimation. It's not a perfect film, like neither is the first one, but it's real close to being a perfect film, real close. Maybe as close as film gets. And that's again, and that's not talking about preference. It's just talking about the skill of the filmmaking involved. I think 3 is one of those wonderfully hypnotic films for me that I can just soak in that world, and I love every moment of it. And I know other people have exactly the opposite reaction. They feel like it's a film where not enough happens, and they can't get behind certain decisions, and they just can't get past certain decisions the filmmakers made. I have no problem like that. I just love that world. I love nihilist cinema. I love films where nothing happy happens in the entire film. I love the emotional range that we don't get everywhere else, and that's all true of Alien 3. It's besides other David Fincher movies, maybe like 7, you don't see a lot of films as bleak as Alien 3.
Or as boring as Alien 3. So
I'm never bored by it. Never bored by it.
But sorry, I kind of veered off track. But to give you an idea of how close these films are to my heart, my daughter's name, my firstborn, is named Ripley.
If your firstborn was named Newt, we were gonna have to have an entirely different conversation.
But I'm supposed to say hi to her. She's watching in the living room. So hi, Ripley.
How old is Ripley?
Ripley is 3.
Oh. And you're letting her watch my show at 3.
Dude, we watch way worse stuff, man. We watched The Fly the other night.
If there's actually a government agency in New Jersey that takes care of that sort of thing. But so, I mean, but to answer your question more fully, I love 3. I think Resurrection is just a unmitigated disaster, but it's not hypnotic at all. It doesn't have any. It has lots of style, but the style is not cohesive in any way that makes any sense. It feels like a comic book version of the Alien universe, and I just have never been able to really connect with that film. The original is on my top 10 films of all time. That tells you everything you need to know about Alien.
Same.
Both of the versus Predator films, I kind of feel, are just fluff summer entertainment films that shouldn't even be really considered as part of the canon properly. They feel like their own separate but not equal thing.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't get upset about those films. I just don't ever revisit them.
No, I'd say the same thing, probably.
My second big controversy of the series will be that I actually enjoy Ridley Scott's prequels for what they are, which is thoroughly unnecessary films. Now, all films are unnecessary, so I'll be the first to say that that's an unfair criticism. But in this case in particular, demystifying the alien world is something that is fraught with danger. Thankfully, Ridley Scott's a skilled enough filmmaker, I think, to pull it off without defanging the original. So it's not a Star Wars situation for me. So I want him to be able to finish his prequel trilogy. I doubt it's going to happen, but those films don't offend me the way they offend other people, though they have plenty of problems.
Oh, they for sure have their problems. In fact, I would say I don't mind Prometheus and Alien Covenant. In fact, something along those lines is what I would have wanted if I could have made my own sequel to the original Alien. A little more explanation of where they came from is probably where I would have looked for, right? I don't know about you. Would something like 3 have been what you were looking for?
No. I mean, and this is a real world situation because I saw the original film on television and then on VHS, but from the second film onward, I saw them all in theaters as they came out. And I already had dreams of being a writer by the time the second film came out. So I was always developing, like, what would I do? Something I do to this day. I think it's a good exercise for anyone who wants to be creative to do. And my view is the biggest mistake the series made was that they stopped evolving the aliens. And the second film is actually a critical piece of that mistake. To me, we never should have seen the alien in the same form twice. We never should have seen another chest burster that looked like a chest burster, another face hugger that looked like a face hugger. So actually, the prequels, at least Prometheus, did that right.
Yeah.
But I felt like the concept of alien wasn't meant as a noun. This thing wasn't named the alien. It was alien. And that we couldn't get our heads across it. Back in the day, a lot of the magazines, whether it's Famous Monsters of Filmland or Fangoria, kept referring to Alien as one of the most Lovecraftian films ever made because you could never get your head around what the monster was. And it was obviously this supremely powerful, unbeatable thing in space. So, I mean, it was a Shoggoth in space film. That's what the original Alien was for so many of us back in the day. So to me, I probably would have done something whereas the alien remained unknowable and always changing. There wouldn't have been the action figure version. Kenner would never have been able to make an action figure.
There you go. But would you have explored what sent them out?
I not in a way that would have demystified them, and that's always the danger. Like, I hate when our villains get explained too much because they cease being scary. And I think that's the line the prequels really have carefully thread. I probably wouldn't have gone there at all. I just would have found a setting, not Earth, because it's too easy. It's what everyone says they want and no one really wants. But I would have found a setting that would have been able to explore the fact that we can't understand this thing at all. And I also would have probably really explored the biomechanical nature of them, which none of the films really have. So it would probably look more like what William Gibson would have done with his Alien 3 script than ultimately what we got from Alien 3. But I love Alien 3, so I don't regret it at all.
We could probably argue about why Alien 3 is good or bad more so than Aliens, but
that's not what people want.
No, it's not. So it's time to throw down. Let me stretch.
All right. So let's start with like how we judge movies, because I think that's important to understand, because Otherwise, we could really end up talking right by each other.
Yeah.
And a little bit of housekeeping there. I judge a movie by the tone and the nature of the film. So when I watch a trauma film, I don't judge it like I would judge, say, The Godfather, because you're already setting yourself up to just simply fail intellectually if you do that. So a tone is very important. If a film takes itself seriously, then I will evaluate it and follow its storyline in that same tone seriously. So if there was a Marvel film makes a joke every 5 minutes, no matter if it needs it or not, because that's the tone of the thing. So you never get too offended when they do something kooky, right? Alien, the original Alien, is a pretty serious film. The sequel, at least outwardly, seems to want to be as serious, although it does inject some humor, and we'll discuss how I think that humor was used in a cloaking device to plot problems. But it's not quite as serious as the original Alien, but it pretends to be. So that's how I choose to judge it. I also judge films based on their internal logic. So I want to make it clear that I'm not going to accept any arguments about something being explained away in a comic book, a novel, fan fiction, interview with the filmmaker later. None of that. It's just what's in the movie, and because it's a sequel, the film that preceded it. I also am going to try not to reference anything that came later in the series, because of course James Cameron was not making a film that had to take those into account. So to be fair, that's the focus. The other thing is I'm looking for, always when I watch a film, I'm looking for a consistent story that's not just a string of sequences that are put together. So to give you an idea of what I'm talking about there, a film like Batman versus Superman works as sequences and falls apart completely as a narrative. Does that make sense to you?
No, I don't.
And some people might disagree, but I'm not a set piece guy. You can't impress me with a set piece. You can impress me with a full narrative. So that's where I come from, and that's where all my criticisms are going to grow from. How do you judge a movie?
It depends on the movie, honestly. It depends on what I'm set up for. And what Aliens is presenting to me, I know you don't want to hear this argument, is it's going to be a fun summer blockbuster kind of movie. So I'm going to look at not just the narrative. I'm going to look at the effects work, the cinematography, the sound design, which is amazing, by the way. I'm sure we'll get to that in a little bit. The whole picture, what was reasonable to follow up that first film. Where would I have gone with it? Where do I think they went wrong with it? Where do I think they did things right? It's really all in contrast. I mean, it's a different argument entirely if Alien doesn't exist and Aliens is a standalone film.
Absolutely. Absolutely. In fact, I want to say this because you actually kind of broached the subject in a way. I'm not going to lie. When people hold something on a pedestal for long enough that you don't see what they see in it, you tend to adopt language that makes you sound more of an extremist on it than it is. I don't particularly think Battle Beyond the Stars, to use another thing that James Cameron was involved with, is a good film. But I don't get into debates with people about Battle Beyond the Stars, right? Because it's not held up on that same pedestal. So to be fair, I will watch Aliens before I watch, one of the Conjuring universe sequels, for instance,
right?
Which I just think are just really giving me nothing I haven't seen before.
Right. So that's good to know. Like, I'm not coming. It's good to know, like, because you're not coming from a place of like extreme hatred, and I'm not coming from this place where I think it's the greatest movie of all time. I just think there's an argument there for it, that it is a fine film.
Okay. So
what are the problems?
Well, okay, and I want to make sure that it's just not me putting a problem out there and you responding to it. So I want you to feel free to interject what you think works and what you think I might be missing at any point.
Okay.
So these are roughly chronological, but I'm sure I'll screw that up at some point. So the first thing I have an issue with is Ripley is now magical. So she goes into a hyperspace pod in Alien, and she awakens 57 years later, but we never bother to explain or explore that, and no one seems particularly even really amazed by that. It's kind of handed a few lines of dialogue, and we just keep rolling, like a Rip Van Winkle story is just not a big deal. And rather than the awe that I guess that's supposed to inspire, to me, it just feels like they wanted it feels like Jim Cameron just wanted to shoehorn a couple of plot contrivances in there that could only happen if a number of years had passed. So to me, already we're kind of fitting the story to the set pieces rather than telling the natural story, which would be she gets picked up and it's, 18 months later.
I don't think that's too far-fetched, though, because when you're talking about deep space travel, which if you could bring any realism to it at all, 57 years I thought was a little bit of a short period of time for her to have been stuck in whatever stasis she was in.
But they make a point in the film that that is a big deal. It's just one line and they let it go.
No, I mean,
they kind of want it both ways, I feel.
I mean, I can see that, but I mean, you said it. It does make that plot a little easier. You are setting up your story that you're trying to tell just by doing it. With something small and minuscule, and we're going to say this a ton, it's an alien movie, for Christ's sake, right? It's about aliens. Like, there is that suspension of disbelief we have to go with when we go into it.
Yeah, and again, it's all about tone for me. Mm-hmm. If it's Flight of the Navigator, I take a different approach. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, the real reason that she, of course, is 57 years later is so that they can introduce a daughter character who is not mentioned in the first film and kill her off of old age. Mm-hmm. And create a motivation for Ripley later in the movie. But this is all like jerry-rigging the plot to do what Cameron wants it to do. He's not building a organically structured film. He's arranging chess pieces and however he has to do it. Mm-hmm. And I think that's bad writing.
Okay, I mean, you could say that, but that also introduces an extremely maternal feature in her character that would play out through the rest of the series,
which wasn't at all hinted in the original film.
No, but we're also fleshing that character out. We're no longer just with Ellen Ripley, crew member from the original movie. We gotta explore who she is a little bit if we're gonna keep her on for the series. She's gonna be our main protagonist. We gotta flesh her out a little bit.
But I would argue you're not fleshing out, you're just rewriting the character. Because here's the thing, and it actually works into my second point, and which is that suddenly Ripley's a moron. In the first film, she's this extremely cautious conservative figure who doesn't want to let Ash back into the ship because he's been contaminated. She's going to follow the contamination protocols carefully to the point where she's willing to let a friend die because she's by the book. She's also very, 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 very devoted to, for instance, she doesn't want to let Dallas go into the air vent because by the book, it should be her or someone below her. So that's the character. And that's why the character, I would argue, survives, is that in all the chaos, she maintains the levelest of head of anyone. But in the new film, in Aliens, it's a little bit old now. In Aliens, so she wakes up, her daughter is dead. She can't get a good job. The company basically blames her for the Nostromo's destruction. Oh, and in the first film, she discovered that the company wanted her dead and sent a robot to kill her. Mm-hmm. And yet she trusts them and goes to space where she knows there's a planet of the monsters where one killed off her entire crew. Now that is the ultimate dumb college girl in a negligee going into the basement in any other horror film scene ever.
See, I disagree. I think that by her going back, especially because that seed's planted a scene before where he says there's 75 families that are stationed on this planet. Last thing we see before that cuts is she says families, right? So that establishes her character as wanting to protect people from this thing because they don't understand what they're about to deal with. That adds a layer to her and turns her into the Ellen Ripley that we know from the series. A ton of her character comes from this movie.
Well, I would argue that they abandon massive portions of Cameron's baggage in the third film, and I think that's done explicitly. But that's, again, I don't really want to talk about the extended series. Mm-hmm. I understand what you're saying, but again, this is not the character from the first film.
No, it's not. And I mean, I'll agree with you there. She's not the same character at all, but this is where she becomes the icon. And that's there. I'm going to have to make that argument with a lot of this movie. A lot of the things that are introduced in this movie are what people think of when they think of this series.
Absolutely. I'm just saying that I don't necessarily think that by itself makes the film great. There's a lot of iconic images from film that I'd say exist within bad film. And specifically, by the way, the technical filmmaking of Aliens, besides the writing, is very, very good usually. There's a couple instances where it's not. But I can't berate the cinematography, the lighting, the tech qualities, most of the acting. It's a good film in those regards. It's the story, it's the screenplay that I think is the weak peg.
No, and I would say that's why I said I kind of judge it overall, right? The plot is its weakest point. You do have to give some concessions to get where we're going here.
But how many concessions are you willing to go before a film simply tips into self-parody?
I don't think we're anywhere near there, though.
I think we'll get there.
Oh, okay. Well, that's right. We haven't even got to the planet yet.
Yeah,
we haven't met the Marines, nothing.
So, I mean, I feel like the daughter was introduced simply to provide an arc, which there's a rule of writing which says that your characters need to be characters. They can't just be plot devices for your main character to bounce off of. And I think there's a huge violation right there. And partially, here's a little bit of backhanded compliment that I will give Jim Cameron about the writing of this film. In its earliest version, this was heavily inspired by the fact that he wanted to get the rights to Starship Troopers.
You took it from me. I was going to be my thing.
Yep. And when he couldn't do that, he kind of retrofit. He took the outline of Alien and threw Starship Troopers into it. And I think that is, in my mind, a monumental mistake. But we'll get there. All I'm saying is that characters should be developed in a way that's consistent with what has gone before. And I feel like instead this was hit the reset button. I'm going to tell a different story. It's enough we have the same actress playing her. Because I do not see any similarities between the Ellen Ripley in the warrant officer Ripley in Alien and the civilian Ripley in Aliens. I just don't. Besides the actress.
See, I just thought, okay, so if we made a sequel to Alien, okay, along the same thing, but you got to write Ellen Ripley any way you wanted to, would you have wrote her the same? I mean, is that as compelling to put on a film? I don't think it is.
Well, first of all, I probably wouldn't have brought the character back. I think the arc of Ellen Ripley in the original film is great. Mm-hmm. I mean, at the point where you've stripped her down to her underwear and made her confront a creature that upturned her entire world. The whole point is that she believes in systems. And the systems are stripped away as ineffectual or actually damaging as the film goes on. You know, she's a company person, mm-hmm. and the company betrays her. She believes in her teammates intrinsically. She would die for her captain, mm-hmm. but one of her teammates ends up to be a robot who tries to kill her with a porn magazine. So it's like everything that holds her character together is stripped away. She ends up with all of that baggage gone and most of her clothes to confront this thing that tore apart her world. And she manages to overcome it. That is the hero's journey in the corporate world. It's done.
Now, I was saying, to your point, everything she knows has been broken down in that first film, okay? Yep. In the second film, we learn not only is her entire belief system is gone. She really has nothing to stand on, and her family is gone. What does she have to lose by going after these things? That's what I think maybe you're missing on a little bit. Maybe she has nothing else.
So is it acceptable? Sorry, someone's shooting outside my window. That's great. Nice. So is it acceptable just to have a character look for danger? I mean, to my thinking, this film is all these problems are fixed by a little bit of better writing that takes exactly a minute of screen time.
She's not looking for danger. She's looking to save people. That's what I'm saying. That's an incredible leap in her character. She wants to help people.
I don't see where there's evidence of that. I just don't.
She wants to eradicate this threat. She knows it's on this planet. Her entire motive behind going down there is just to get rid of it, to eradicate it. Has nothing to do with the company. None of that.
But it does, because she knows the company won't.
It is dumb that she believes them when they say we're going to eradicate, not to study. That's dumb. I'll give you that. She had a stupid moment. But her motives behind going were very genuine.
I don't know. I think that if that were the case, we wouldn't have dumb nightmare sequences to try and convince us that she can't get. She's having nightmares, can't dream, can't have a good night's rest, and she's lost her daughter, who apparently she was okay, traveling. To your point earlier of how long space travel would take,
exactly.
She walked away from her daughter. To me, it all seems like a contrivance. And here's the thing. Here's how quickly you can fix it. The ship that picks her up in the beginning, it's the Sulaco already on its way. Done. So there's what I'm saying about bad writing versus good writing. You look at they created more problems than they fixed by doing this to the character.
I still think that just by adding that she had to volunteer to go did something for her character.
I think it makes her character less well-rounded, and ultimately her character starts to be a puppet for the plot. Because ultimately she didn't go back because the character was brave. She went back because we wanted to have a movie, right?
Well, yeah, I mean, we got to get there somehow, right?
But I gave you a way to get there without the problems.
Yeah, okay. So, all right, in that sequence, she would fight it the whole way, right? Well, now she looks scared. She's not strong. She doesn't become what she is at the end of this film, which is just total badass. If she's just trying to, or if he comes up to her and says, hey, we need you to go back, please. And she goes, nope, roll credits. Like, movie's over.
Right. And that's how a logical conversation would have happened, which is why you don't write that scene. Just promise me that you're just going up there to kill them all. Now, she knows the company lies. He's a company guy. He's the most swarmy company guy you've ever seen. She falls for, the most transparent lie. Did you, when you first saw the film, think the company had changed their ways? So why would she?
No, but like that's part of, and somebody was mentioning in the comments, like that is, if you had her picked up by a ship that was already on its way, come on, what are the odds, right?
No, you're wrong. She is in the shipping lane directly on the way to the planet. The first film makes that explicit. They have not gone back into full speed at the point where she goes back to sleep. She can't. She's in the shuttle. She is in exactly the shipping lane between Earth and Archeon, which, they had to retitle for this film for some god-awful reason.
I don't know, man. That just seems cool. I don't know. And maybe that wasn't, because like I said, I missed it. So, that would just feel way too forced. I think by her making a conscious effort to go back, that had to be done to set up her character.
So you'd prefer the character to have a lapse in logic about the company rather than simply be picked up by the company who we know,
if she's there,
works that trade route.
Or we could look at it a different way. If she's there, she may be able to do something about it, which is where she's coming from.
But
and all hinges around that there were
she barely survived the first film.
Mm-hmm.
What is she going to do?
She's now going in with a team of Marines, and she's the only one that has seen these things. She's the only one they can go to ask, what are we up against? She is useful and needs to be there.
I'm not sure what she knows, though. I don't know what information she has that would help them to survive, and the movie actually kind of plays that out. So you have to believe now that she's just mistaken about how she could help them.
No, either way, okay? Mistaken or not. She's been there. She wants to help out. That's what helps set her up as this iconic character. I would argue without aliens, Ellen Ripley would not be an action icon and an icon for women everywhere who want a presence like that on screen.
The first half of that I'll strongly agree with. I think that you're underplaying the importance of the first film having not just a final girl, but a final girl who was the smartest, bravest, most resourceful through the whole movie. I think it would have a legacy. It might not have a legacy toting a gun in one hand and a small blonde girl in the other, yes, but it would have a legacy.
I would venture to say that she is the leading female action icon. There's nobody bigger. So without this movie, she wouldn't reach that height. She would, in ways,
Sure,
many
sure.
ways, be the final girl of the Alien movie. That's what she would be.
I think she'd be more than that, but to your point, this film did solidify her in pop culture as some kind of feminist icon. Though I don't really want to get into the argument about whether the character herself is feminist or not, because
Oh no, I don't.
that would be its own 3-hour video.
No, I'm just saying it's nice, and like a reason I named my daughter Ripley was she was such a strong, positive female role model, and it's a cool name. But besides that,
So the next issue I have is they get to this planet, and we have a bunch of already like attempts at comedy starting to invade. We have Hicks falling asleep on the way down to show what a badass he is, which to me is just one kind of like a tonally offsetting moment, but whatever. I'm willing to look past it. It's not what I would do, definitely.
I am going to interject here for a minute. Hicks is my least favorite character in this movie.
Oh, well, I'm glad to hear that, because
best part of 3 is that he's dead. I'm just going to point that
out. Well, we're not in disagreement. But they get down to the planet, and we are introduced to Newt. Now, Newt is so transparently the surrogate for Jones the cat. It's not funny. But beyond that, she's just an improbable character. I mean, I would say more than improbable. She's been on this planet with a hive of aliens by herself and survived through cunning. But she's also survived by hiding in like ductwork and cubby holes. You know, the places where the alien in the first film used to travel through the Nostromo. The character does not have any right to be able to exist or to be alive.
I think Newt is a very strong plot point in this movie for a couple reasons. How old were you when you saw this movie?
I would have been 13.
13? Okay. Well, it's probably not going to play out. But a younger child seeing this, that is them on screen. They can put themselves in place of Newt.
Okay. Is that a good enough reason to write the character the way the character is written?
It also works for that maternal instinct that Ripley establishes. Okay, her child. She's lost her child. This is clearly the stand-in for her child, and it makes that character much more interesting. Plus, it's a sad story. She watched her parents die. Pulls on your heartstrings a little bit.
Well, people with heartstrings, it does.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, if a hive of aliens can't kill the little girl, we have a really imbalanced threat.
Dude, she's small. She can get in like vent shafts, everything.
Yes, but that's how the alien gets around in the first film.
Yeah, I know, but these are much smaller vent shafts.
Is that really the defense?
Prove me wrong.
Okay, it's one of, again, this is symptomatic of the way Jim Cameron writes, is that Newt is there to provide motivation for another character.
Mm-hmm.
That's not good writing. You write characters, they have interactions. You just don't build a character simply to be a foil or a motivation for another character. That's bad writing by definition. So I also have just this issue with, I mean, how much further over the top can we get with Newt? The little blonde girl who has the one-liners, who says nonsensical stuff like they mostly come out at night when the planet always looks like night. Because it's so
time is no longer a construct now.
No,
even if it's always dark, I mean, there's still a nighttime.
So, no, that's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is the first film, the alien didn't seem to have any downtime that we could notice at all. So again, now we're building on something so that we can have that line, because it's a good line. It just doesn't belong in this movie.
Well, I mean, also you were dealing with that alien for how long in that first movie? Now we have a colony of aliens, and they're building their own. I mean, their own patterns. They're living on this planet. Maybe they're nocturnal. Like, it's the series evolving. It's not one alien. Things would happen differently with a group of these things living on a planet.
Perhaps. But again, they're evolving. They're not able to catch the little girl. Later, they'll wipe out this entire platoon of Marines, which, by the way, how many people were in the colony? How many Marines did they send?
Okay. I mean, yeah, that's... I told you the film had plot problems.
How many people do they leave back on the Sulaco? Because we never see any of them.
Okay. I mean, the film has problems. But by sending a small group of Marines in, we get it, and that's something I was going to bring up that I love about this movie, is an alien. We really got one iconic character out of that, and I'm not complaining. We got Ripley out of that, who is the most iconic character in the entire series. Out of this movie, we get fantastic characters, especially out of those Marines. Hudson, I hate Hicks, but Hicks is notable. Vasquez, Bishop. I mean, so many more characters come from this film than did the original.
I disagree with that entirely. I think the entire cast of the original are iconic.
I think they're great, but they don't translate. The concept of the Colonial Marines came from this movie, and they are probably, barring Ripley in the Xenomorph, the most iconic portion of the entire series.
You see, I really just don't see it. I think that Tom Skerritt as Dallas is just horror royalty as far as characters go. I think I think they're all. I mean, Veronica Cartwright's Lambert is probably the least iconic of the original crew, and everyone still knows her. I don't know about that, and I think that the other issue is, well, it's fine to have this. Again, the plot is being developed. We're gonna have a few characters. We're gonna have a few Marines, so we can give them all FaceTime, and you'll know them. But again, you're designing the film for effect, not for logic or for narrative.
You can't go by logic in a film like this. There is no logic here. What kind of
internal logic? Internal logic. I'm not talking about it taking place in the world proper as we know it. I'm just saying internally it has to be consistent. The threat has to be equal. If they're talking about dozens of families and they send in 14 Marines, I'm not sure I buy that. By the way, another question for you. How are they going to extract these people if they needed to? They sent 2 shuttlecrafts down that held like 8 people a pop.
I mean, I thought it's pretty obvious. They knew that everyone was pretty much dead, if not entirely dead.
Then why did Ripley go if they knew everyone was dead? I thought she was saving people.
Ripley did not know this. The motivation for the company was to get down there and get facehuggers, eggs, something.
Sure.
Right? That's the only reason for getting her in there. They actually don't know what a facehugger is. They don't know what an egg is. They've heard what a full-blown xenomorph is. They need to know what they can bring back. They need her to identify these things.
I think they could probably identify them pretty easily on their own. I don't think they'd be like, oh, that chair is really a xenomorph.
No, I'm not saying like that. I'm saying like, okay, this is the thing that will attach to your face or whatever. Or they come out of these eggs.
So our soldiers that you think are more iconic than the original crew are walking through the station, which I have identified as a giant fusion reactor that has a community living on top of it, which is a cool concept. It's borrowed from other sources, but it's a cool concept. But I have this issue, whereas you have Apone, the leader. I did some research to make sure I had all the names of the group, say, don't fire in there, no live rounds. Now, he never tells his troops why, which is kind of troubling, except that, of course, we want the scene to happen, right?
Exactly.
But they go in there, they smuggle in live ammunition because they're so tough, and they set off a chain reaction of a nuclear Armageddon on this planet, right? So, first off, military people are not this stupid. And B, if they don't follow orders, they wouldn't be put on a mission that takes them across the universe. In a world that you're building where the military are that callous and undisciplined, less so than today, by the way. I mean, it's cartoony. It's absolutely sitcom level writing to have them go in there and do it. Now, I understand that scene where the guns start firing and you get that sound effect and the big arc of bullets. It looks great, but it really doesn't make a bit of sense. And it makes those characters, again, into absolute morons, which is another thing that keeps happening in this movie. People keep making the worst possible choices, but yet we're supposed to think they're smart characters.
I don't even know if I can argue with that. Like,
But
I see what you're saying. Like, we got to get to that point somehow.
But do we? Like, you couldn't take the story in a more organic place, whereas you don't have to kind of sort of have characters do something. Now, listen, the movie Deep Star 6 has a character, Miguel Ferrer, as a character who's slowly going insane from being at the ocean's floor for long enough. And he does some really bad, dumb things, but they establish why. This film does not even care to do that. And, Deep Star 6 is a little cheesy sci-fi horror film that probably was inspired by aliens. So I'm just bothered by the lack of like writing proficiency to get these set pieces to happen, because this is a film about set pieces.
Oh no, it definitely is. There's a scene coming up that is pretty much the film. It's pretty much if you put the film in a box, you wanted to show it to somebody, like this is what you would show them. Like, I mean, but no, I see where you're going with it. I mean, I don't think if you look at it as a whole, I mean, it has its plot issues. It does. The overall presentation is something that's worthy to be a sequel of Alien.
And I just want to take a break there from just straight plot. I'll get back to it. But another big problem I have is more aesthetic, because you just brought up that you're taking the big picture. Big picture is a big part of it for me too. Before I saw this film, I bought the Starlog movie tie-in magazine, which I don't know if you ever saw it. And I intentionally didn't read. The biggest article in it is just the story of the movie, and I didn't read that because I wanted to be surprised. It took an amazing amount of self-control at that age. But I read the rest of the articles about the making. I looked at all the photos a million times. I was very excited. My sister got to see the film with friends before I did. I was jealous. When I actually saw the film in context, my very first reaction, because I wasn't not thinking the way I'm thinking today about the film. The very first thing I had a problem was, why are these aliens so easy to kill? Like the one in the first film is like this absolutely staggering menace. And in Aliens, they're basically monkeys that you shoot them once and they fall over. And it really depressed me to see this magnificent monster. I consider one of the great classic screen monsters. I'd hold it up against my beloved Universal monsters, reduced in such a fashion. I mean, did you feel that at all?
No, I mean, they have more firepower in this movie. I mean, it's just logical. You go in with that kind of firepower, you're going to be able to take some out. So I mean, if you're alone and your only defense from this thing is hiding and tricking it, it's a much scarier movie. That's also what makes the original a sci-fi horror movie. And I've heard this referred to as sci-fi horror, and I could not. There's none. This is an amazing sci-fi action film, as far as I see it. But I mean, no, you introduce things that could explain away those.
All right. I just I never wanted to see the monster defanged the way this movie did, and one of the other reasons I love 3 so much is, again, they brought the stature of the monster back up. They started referring to it as a beast and the monster from the cellar, and they built a mythology in that movie around that single monster, and I think it works better for me.
On that level, one monster, no weapons, which is the only thing that 3 really does well, is you're on a prison colony with 0 weapons, right? So you're at the mercy of this thing. It does that well. What is going on back there?
Now they're fireworks, but the first one was definitely a shotgun. And no, I don't know what's going on. It's Jersey. What can I say? So the next thing is I actually need your help here on the next thing.
Uh-oh.
So I want you to explain Burke's plan to me, because this plan is the most unworkable conspiracy ever.
Okay, no, it's not great. No, it's not, and that's one of the problems I have with it. It's pretty much after the scene where we get to the point where we find out what Burke's really trying to do here. He has, I mean, what he's gonna release the face huggers, and it's gonna impregnate Newt, and he's gonna somehow be able to take her back, and like that's gonna be okay. I don't know.
Right, because they say that Ripley says the plan, how she describes it, is they're going to get them impregnated. They're going to freeze them in their pod, which the first film establishes. So kudos for that bit of research. And then they're going to he's going to tamper with the cryopods of the rest of the team members, which she calls freezers,
and kill
them. So my thing here is very simple. First off, the cryotubes are medical chambers. That's established in the first film. So the first thing the medical chambers would do would be like, hey, by the way, parasite. Right? So they wouldn't get through customs like he says they would.
Well, hang on now. I don't know about that. These are previously undocumented. How would they know?
Well, again, I don't want to bring up the third film. But the first film, they use the same technology. The machine that's used in the med lab in the second is the same technology we see inside the pods in the first film. So although they never state it, it's heavily implied. I mean, to put someone into cryogenic sleep, you'd have to have some sort of medical system.
Conjecture.
But it is, but it's pretty logical. So to put someone into cryogenic sleep, you'd have to have some kind of medical system on board, right?
No, maybe. I mean, it's never explicitly.
I think it's extraordinarily reasonable.
Oh, we can't go there, though, man. We can't go there.
All right. Well, I will let people decide on their own. I object to the idea that bringing back 2 human specimens frozen and a bunch of dead soldiers wouldn't tip off customs, which she explicitly states that customs is what they want to get by.
Yeah. Do you have any fruit on board?
Yeah. Do you have any fruit or insects or maybe small animals?
Any parasitic aliens?
Yeah, I just don't see it. And the other problem I have is he has 2 aliens, facehuggers, gift wrapped for him in the station, right, in the colony. All he has to do is hike these up into a shuttle, hide them, and he's good to go.
Yeah, but we had to have the big bad, right?
We had to have the scene in the room where they're locked in with the facehuggers. It's all about creating a scene.
I'm not even go to the scene. Yes and no. Okay, we did need some of that to create that scene. You could have done that scene a million different ways. It didn't have to go down that way.
Oh, sure.
We did have to establish that this dude is just flat out evil, right?
I guess because he is the company in the film. Yeah. But I mean, if you saw the first film, you kind of know, right?
No, but I'm even gonna say it. A lot of people watch this film independently of the series.
Oh, that's probably true.
I mean, how long was it after the original? I don't know, 5 years or so?
6 years.
I don't remember. It wasn't.
It feels like it was longer than it was.
Yeah, and the first film wasn't as successful as this film. So there are things that you are going to have to re-explain. From what I understand, there was a debate whether to even make a sequel, due to the fact that the original was not as successful as they thought it would be. So you are looking at sort of a reboot situation.
No, I won't give it a reboot, but the issue really at 20th Century Fox is that Alien was expensive. And it returned its investment, but it was extraordinarily investment, and they wanted Star Wars money out of it.
Oh, no, for sure.
They greenlit the original Alien to get another Star Wars, which is ridiculous, but it's what they did. And then for the sequel, Jim Cameron went to a blackboard, wrote Alien, looked back at him, then added an S, and got a film greenlit.
Oh, it wasn't quite like that. There was a film in development already that.
Yeah, but that was his pitch, though.
I mean, they went to him because of Terminator, but
right.
But I mean, I think he handled it well. But I'm saying is the first movie is not as. More people saw this movie for sure, and still to this day are watching this movie more so than the original.
I don't know to this day. I'd push back on you than that. I think
I'm not going to go with genre fans, or you know what I mean. Now, in the normies is what I call them, like your everyday film goer. This is the Alien movie to them.
Alien was a pretty transcendent film. I mean, it was definitely a film that was discussed like any blockbuster. Mm-hmm. It wasn't genre affair proper. I don't know. We'd have to look at the hard numbers there, and the hard numbers even can be manipulated.
Yeah.
Safe to say these two were very, very, very big films.
Yeah, and I would say I'm pretty sure more so this one. But
I'm
I'll
not
tell
sure
you
about
this,
that.
as a kid growing up in the 90s, okay, aliens, not Alien, Aliens was always on cable.
See, but how about for so many years, Alien played on regular television before Aliens existed. So I'm not sure. I mean, and there might be no way to track which one was actually bigger because if you're taking all forms of consumption in, I'm not sure. But they were both huge. To your
Anyways,
point.
like my point, we got off on it was just
Yes.
reestablishing, because I think if you're watching Alien, you can kind of miss how evil the company is in that movie, and they really wanted to
I don't
slap
think
you
you.
in the face.
No, I don't think you can mistake how evil the company is. And
I'm
like
not saying. I mean,
all crew expendable and setting your
it
android to
it is
wipe
not
out.
it is not what carried out of that film.
I
That is
think I don't. There's a lot. Alien was kind of a very dense cultural moment for film. Um, it didn't have to be. The film that they initially were going to make was not the film they ended up making. They ended up with something much more substantial than they set out to. Anyway, during the scene in which Ripley and Newt face off against the face huggers,
Mhm.
there's a bit in the film that always has made me laugh out loud because it's so friggin' ridiculous and mirrors another problem I have later. So one of the facehuggers leaps at Ripley and she grabs it and she's holding it away from her face and it's getting close and it's a big suspense sequence. Excellently directed. And then another facehugger goes at Newt, who pushes a rolling cart against its tail to hold it against the wall. This little girl holds off. I mean, physics just goes right out the window.
Hey, it's cute. It's the 80s, and she is the sidekick. Shit like this happens, Lauren. Oh, excuse the language. Sorry.
Now you can say shit.
Okay, cool.
Just no disparaging words, but language I don't have a problem with. So I feel it's like another one of those scenes where it's like, just what the scene wanted to be, he let it be rather than what it probably should have been on any logical level, any consistently internal level. And again, here's another part of my pushback, and I know this is the conversation we're having, but we mentioned it earlier, so I'm going to say it.
Mm-hmm.
Ripley as a feminist icon is such a weird thing to me because, again, here's another scene where her boyfriend comes and saves her. And I kind of regret that decision if they were going for what the final act of this film suggests she is.
Yeah.
You could say she's growing into it.
That's where I was
going to go. But if she's so maternal about protecting Newt as a surrogate daughter, I just think we're projecting into it what we want to be rather than what really makes sense.
I mean, you really can't. I would say it's growth because you really can't argue how she was written in this film to be a much stronger person. And that is just happening as the film progresses. By the end of it, she stands on her own. So,
yeah, but I'd argue that the arc is so much less dramatic in this film than the first. I mean, she has her whole world just destroyed in that first film. Whereas this, she goes intentionally into the danger zone. Mm-hmm. And she finds danger, which that's not any growth right there. She takes control of a SUV, for lack of better words, to go pull people out of the fire. You know, that's pretty heroic. Mm-hmm. But then when her character needs to be just the damsel in distress, well, she's the damsel in distress now. Oh wait, now she's going to take charge of the military unit. You know, and now I just feel like, again, she gets pushed around by the plot by what needs to get to that next sequence.
I don't know. I will agree to disagree there because you can make an argument either way.
All right, let's talk about one-liners. Are you one of these people who love the one-liners in this film?
I do. I wrote a bunch of them down.
So all the one-liners in this film are meant to like gloss over problems in the movie. It's like it's the world's worst lazy writing. Like, well, then put her in charge. It kind of ignores the fact that the little girl survived on the planet where the Marines can't, right?
No, I think they're just one-liners, Lauren. I think they're just there to be funny.
You don't think that they're at all referencing things in the plot that are uncomfortably dangling?
No,
No?
I don't think it runs that deep.
Okay. Then they serve less of a purpose for me, and
Yeah,
they don't work.
it's to add a little lightheartedness to some scenes.
So do you think that's effective? I mean, overall?
It's the lines that people tend to remember the movie.
Sure. Again, my position is Aliens is not a good film. I'm not going for the popular opinion. I'm just saying, do you think it works?
I'm saying it does on that level, even though you may not like Aliens. This is I can't say it enough. This is the Alien film to so many people. Things like the one-liners are what make it as beloved as it is.
Sure, but like I said in the beginning, I'm not talking about what people like.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I'm cool with anyone. If this is someone's favorite film, and I'm sure it probably is more than a few people in the chat right now's favorite film, I'm
Mm-hmm.
cool with that. I'm never going to try and take anyone's joy away from them on the film.
No.
It's just when people talk about the film as, you know, a superlative piece of filmmaking, that's where my conjecture.
That's where we really need to get to. We'll get through the plot because I've acknowledged the plot has its issues. Anybody really could. When we step back here in a minute and take a look at the whole picture.
We have a few more pieces, then we'll get there.
Yeah, and that's what I'm saying. I want to kind of save that for.
Yeah. So what about they cut the power? Do you have an issue with the aliens cutting the power?
I don't want to go to sequels, but I mean, we do establish that they are a little smarter than what's let on.
So how come the power doesn't stay out?
Backup generators.
So the aliens can turn off the power, but they can't turn off the power generators.
They're not in the same room.
Oh, it's geographical. That's the problem.
Well, who has that kind of time?
Oh, they're on a schedule too.
Yes, they have a concept of time. We have established this.
Isn't it easier just to say the plot wanted the lights to go out because it looks cooler?
That's fine. And like, I'm fine with those things. And I think that makes for a better film.
See, I don't. I think whenever you're maneuvering things just to get your cool set pieces, I think that it cheapens the experience. The first film never needed to do this.
No, but that first film's a completely different animal.
Well, that's true. I will fully agree with that. And maybe by action film rules, none of this is quite as egregious.
That's kind of what I'm getting at. Like, you didn't need these kind of plot devices in the original movie because there was so much story to tell with her and this creature that, I mean, you didn't need any of these things.
So do you think if Christopher Nolan had made Aliens, do you think we would have these plot issues though? That's where I think I would disagree with you, is that I don't think it's okay to just give a pass because it's an action film.
Would Christopher Nolan have made a true to form action film? Or would he have made?
You could argue that he does make action films,
or does he make these pseudo dramas?
I think he makes existential dramas.
There you go.
That are kind of wrapped in action film tropes.
I mean, it's much different than a James Cameron film. I mean, I hate to say it like that, but when you think of James Cameron and his style of filmmaking, that is quintessential action.
You're right.
The master of action films, and there are things that you can overlook because it's an action film. Have you seen True Lies? I'm pretty sure Arnold Schwarzenegger hangs off of like a fighter jet in that movie. So I'm cool with that, and that's what I've mentioned before. Like when we argue this, it's like, man, and I saw where you crippled me a little bit on Twitter. You said this could not devolve into it's just a fun movie. It's a fun action movie. But we're going to go there. Like, your suspension of disbelief is at this point already. Just let it roll.
Well, it goes back to what you said earlier, however. It's a very different conversation if Alien doesn't exist, right?
Oh, it's way different. Yeah.
Right. So I think that's kind of the crux of it. I'm judging the film very much on what I want from an Alien film based on what the first film is.
Now,
and that's my weakness, but it's still going to be how I view the film.
Now, see, I've thought about that. I was actually thinking about it in the car ride home today because I knew I was going to have to bring this up at some point. I would not want an Alien sequel just like the first. I just wouldn't want that. I don't think it would work. I don't think there's any way you can make that work. I think going in a completely different direction, and also giving people what they want to see, which is clearly what happened to Ripley after the movie, and more aliens.
I would just say that it borrows this entire plot from Alien point by point, though. So, I mean, basically, the addition of guns is what we're talking about.
Well, no, I mean, there's an isolation in that first movie that is a huge point in that plot. She's by herself.
Well, at the end, she's by herself,
and that's the best part of Alien.
Again, I'm a guy who lives in mood and atmosphere. So I love living in that alien world from all of it. I love them just having to walk out of the ship and walk to the derelict. I mean, so I might be a bit different than a lot of viewers, but I love movies that make me feel like I'm in this world where I feel things I've never felt before. And I felt that in spades with Alien. And I honestly feel that every time I revisit Alien.
No, and like I said, it's a way better film. But I do you think James Cameron could have recreated any of that?
No, and I'm not. I think that your bigger point that you made, that we shouldn't get just a repeat of Alien, is absolutely right. I'm never for just repeating something ad nauseum. I'm a Friday the 13th fan, but I'm also on record of saying I have all the Friday the 13th I need. I have more Friday the 13th than I need, honestly.
We agree on that, by the way.
Yeah. Well, we agree on a shocking lot about Friday the 13th, so that's a different video for another time.
Except, and I think, I can't remember who brought it up in the chat, but I have to bring it up real quick.
Uh-oh.
I think it was Nico. Let me see here. Somebody brought up Friday the 13th Part 5. Yep. I'm never going to debate Lauren on Friday the 13th Part 5, A New Beginning. He'd eat me alive, but I still really like it. So, Nico, you're the shit.
No, but you know what? I wouldn't have this kind of debate about Friday 5. Friday 5 is transparently what it is.
Yeah.
It's transparently a dumb exploitation film. Again, I judge films based on what the film asks me to judge it on. And that's tone, atmosphere, how seriously it takes itself. Mm-hmm. Friday 5 doesn't take itself seriously.
No, it doesn't.
I just don't enjoy myself watching that movie.
That's the beauty of that film to me, is it embraced what that series really was at the end. But anyway, different series. But.
For another time. Mm-hmm. So I want to talk about the alien blood.
Okay.
So in the first film, a drop of the alien blood cuts through 3 levels of floor and threatens to go through the hull, which is the reason they have to take this incredible care not to seriously harm the alien in such a way that it's just going to bleed them into non-existence. Mm-hmm. The blood in Aliens, it doesn't operate on any sort of consistent level. I mean, Hicks should have been a puddle on the goddamn floor for being splashed by blood.
I've always had that problem with the movie, and actually subsequent sequels.
Yes,
but no, you're right there. Entirely.
So
that could have been really fun to explore, and it was trying to maneuver around that would have been interesting to see.
Well, yeah, and kind of my point is, like, they didn't firing even the flame units in the hive, because you're sitting on top of a fusion reactor, it still would have caused the problem. You still would have melted down the planet because the blood would have gone down and destroyed the machinery around the fusion reactor.
Lauren, we don't know what this blood does when it's introduced to heat. Okay, I mean, that's obviously what you're missing here.
You're completely right. I stand down on the alien blood issue. Not really. Mm-hmm. So final act, and this is where I think you're going to agree with me more, because I think it's harder to argue the final act problems. The alien queen stows away on a dropship that's roughly the same size as her.
Hang on, let's go back to that alien queen, though, okay? I know where you're going. With it being the same size, that doesn't make any sense. Who cares?
I care.
How dope is that alien queen?
Except when she looks like a rod puppet, she looks great. Like in stills, she's awesome. When she moves, she tends to showcase that she's a rod puppet, which the rest of the film, here's a compliment I'll play Aliens. Although I don't love the redesign of the aliens, I thought they hid the man in the suit better than they had any right to, considering they went even further into just regular men in suits.
Yeah, and I mean, the aliens are on screen much more often than in the original movie.
And the fact that there was only like 5 on set, but they made them feel like there was like 38 is pretty amazing. So again, technical stuff I'm down with.
But I mean, that was all in frame. That was all done on camera. There was no, I mean, that is amazing. Like, and that's the kind of things that I'm trying to push here. From my point, you've got me on the plot. I'll give you that. It has plot holes, but it is a wonder to look at. And things like the alien queen is an awesome concept to that movie. They have a hive going on. Wow. Never would have thought of that.
I just wish she had been even more of an evolution beyond looking like a bigger version of the aliens with a crown-shaped head. I wish they'd gone even crazier with it, to be honest. But I love the concept.
Just like a completely different thing entirely.
Well, you should have been able to see kind of a little bit of the DNA, the same way from facehugger to chestburster to alien. I would have loved that. It just seemed a little bit like, but the execution saves it.
Yeah.
My thing is, and again, you can't blame the film for this. So this is not a criticism of Aliens. Mm-hmm. I wish that had not simply codified the life cycle of the alien. And then from then on, that's what we got.
Yeah.
I think that's a shame.
No, I see that.
Because creatively, oh my God, the places they could have gone.
Oh, yeah. And I do like your point about, even being crazier. That would have been cool. Something more shocking to see than rather just a really big xenomorph. But,
so what do you say about her hiding in the landing gear of a ship that's the same size as her?
Hey, man, that happened. Okay, that's all I know.
How about the fact that all planes since the beginning of flight have had to balance the ratio of weight versus lift?
Hang on now. Now, this ain't a Cessna, all right? This is an intergalactic space traveling.
Right. So there would have been a computer on board that said, hey, guys, we're about 8 tons too heavy. Something's wrong. We're using a lot more fuel than we did a moment ago.
Maybe it was running on iOS, and I had no idea.
It was like Windows 8? Is that the problem here?
Yeah. It was just a software issue. No, there's nowhere to go with that. But it is a set piece, and I'll give you that.
Right, and that's what all my criticisms come down to, really.
But I mean, it's a really well strung together series of set pieces.
Visually.
Yes, and visually, this thing is amazing, and the sound design on this movie,
pretty amazing as well.
Not just the music.
I will say I think the original sound design is better, but it's to a different effect.
Exactly.
So they get up to the Sulaco, where apparently no one's flying it, and there's no other one there, and they get into a confrontation with the alien queen, and Ripley decides despite the fact that she's on a military ship, that the thing we use to load boxes in the ship is the proper tool to fight the alien.
Yeah.
It's a cool shot, I guess, but it's not even a good weapon because you're still exposing yourself to it, to the monster.
But I thought we've already established that this is about setting up those moments.
Right, and I think that's a bad thing.
I know, but okay, so you've gotten to go through your whole plot thing.
I have one last thing, okay. and we can get through it real quick. Okay. So the vacuum of space is enough to pull the alien queen out into space, but not enough to tear Ripley's arm off because she just kind of hangs over with the elbow over a rung of ladder. So physics are completely gone now.
Well, yeah, they went out the window when we visited the planet full of fucking aliens. Actually, I didn't want to hit the fuck button. Sorry.
That's okay. You can fuck around a little bit.
Okay.
I mean, what it comes down to me is, again, I judge a film based on how it presents itself, and it presented itself as a very serious film. So if we have to go back to, but it's a lot of fun or it looks great, I think that's a failure. You may not feel that way.
It goes a long way in film, though.
To some audiences, yes.
I mean, and you're a writer, Lauren, so of course these things stick out to you, right?
But you know what? And I'm gonna let you finish your point because I know I'm cutting you off, and that's not fair. But so I think people think more of that than it is because for 15 years of my life between high school and the publication of my first novel, and it was probably more than 15 years. I'm just gonna claim it's 15 years. I didn't do a whole lot of writing. And that's when most of my feelings about this film really developed. But
did that mean you weren't a writer? Your mind didn't work in that way?
Well, I still grew up too close to the microwave oven, yeah.
No, but what I'm saying is you even told me at the beginning of this, by the time you saw Aliens, you already had aspirations to be a writer.
Early aspirations, yeah. I mean, what I was writing was far worse than the screenplay to Aliens.
And we talked a little bit beforehand about the way you watch movies. Much different than me. Like that's why I love watching the Autopsy series because like I'm like, oh, I did not see that in the film. Like that's not what I was looking for.
So if a film's firing on all cylinders and working for me, I don't think analytically about the film structure at all, or the storytelling techniques at all. If it's working, I'm just like every other film goer, just mouth open, popcorn going in, wop 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 wop. Get me my huge soft drink that's larger than my stomach, and I'm happy. When I start to think about, hey, that was a weird thing they just did, that's when you know the film has done something to put me off. And maybe people don't do that. I do that. I don't know.
I mean, some things bother me. Like in a film, if I see something that logically doesn't make sense, I'm like, oh, that would never happen. But like, it doesn't take me out of it. I think it may take you out of it a little more than it would me.
I think like it depends on the film. Like the films I've recovered, like there's films like, you know what, that was really lazy how they did that transition to that character, and then the movie does something really smart, and I'll be like, oh, I'm back. Or it does something just so outrageous, and I'm like, whoa, I'm on board for them going crazy, because crazy always wins the day with me. Mm-hmm. Like again, let's use Jason X as an example because it's a common ground, right? So Jason X is a film I judge on its own. Just on itself, it sets itself as not terribly serious. It's a thrill ride. It embraces every aspect of what that series had become by that point. So for me, it's just sit back and let's have some fun. I can't do that with Aliens because Aliens keeps telling me, oh, this is the plight of a woman who lost her child. Now she's trying to redeem herself for not being there for her kid. Oh my God, if you're going to bring in themes that are that deep, then I'm going to judge you on themes that are that deep. And I don't feel that Aliens can pay it out.
Okay, I'll give you that. I'll give you that. And like I said, I'm trying to think where I want to go with this. Is it a worthy sequel? Not is it a good film? Because I mean, there's films in the series that are not good films.
That's true. And again, there's a difference between good film and favorite films or films you like. Mm-hmm. Because I would place Aliens below certain titles that I'm sure other people wouldn't. Mm-hmm. I reach for some understanding of what was going on in Resurrection more often than I revisit Aliens, period. But that said, it's one of those situations whereas I'm almost going in despite myself. The question I'd ask you back is, has Aliens been a part of your life as something you enjoyed from a young age for so long that you want to preserve that?
No. I think I hit on it earlier. I saw Aliens like in my mid-20s.
Okay. So
I think it was, in my argument here, I mean, like I said, I just like poking at you and I wanted to know why you hated the movie. That's kind of why we're here. I think that Aliens is what we needed in a sequel. Something along those lines. I didn't want to see Alien again.
But I think we got Alien again. That's the thing. So, I mean, the idea is they respond to a distress call. Mm-hmm. A group of people goes down to the planet. They have to face off against the alien menace. Yes, they don't go back to the
well, it's over. Okay, well, you're oversimplifying.
We have a countdown to a clicking a countdown clock device at the end. Mm-hmm. We kind of do go through the same plot points, point by point, at about the same times in the film, and we end the film in a remarkably similar way of, jettisoning the alien into space because we're stuck with the same ending.
Okay.
And in one case, in Alien, because it's a horror film, we strip our character of all of her conventional beliefs and her clothes as a representation of that. In Aliens, because we're making an action film, we put her in armor for that final fight.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think that the difference between the two in impact is that I buy the character whose world was swept out from under them. I don't particularly buy Ellen Ripley putting herself in danger and then rising to the occasion, being more adept than everyone around her, except maybe the little girl who survived longer. I don't think it's as earned. I don't think it works for me. Now, I'm not the biggest action film fan. I like action films. I'd say it's my second favorite genre. But like, if you hand me an Under Siege 2, I laugh at you. because to me that's not worth watching. So I might just be a different kind of viewer.
But you never did answer. Is it a worthy successor to Alien?
For me, no.
Where does it stand in the series for you?
See, that's a difficult question because I almost put it to the side of the series when I talk about the series. I think it's more successful for what it is than Resurrection. It pales considerably to 3 to me. The Alien versus Predator movies, I don't even consider part of the franchise proper. They're like their own thing. It's kind of comic book and kind of just dumb summer fun films. And they have moments I like in them, and there's a whole lot that I think is real dumb in them. Mm-hmm. But I actually am, and here if anyone's still on my side in the chat, they won't be for long. I actually enjoy the prequels for what they are. And I would say that I probably enjoy both those films more than I enjoy Aliens.
It's unfortunate, man. It is. I'm not going to change your mind on it, obviously.
No.
I do think. I think we can agree it's a well-made film, as far as film goes. Because you even said it: the visual effects, the sound design, the cinematography.
Yeah, well, it's a well-made film now. There was a few problems that were fixed for its video release that were in its original theatrical cut, and that was just at the time a lot of this stuff was still getting released to theaters with wires attached. There's been some digital trickery to continually to make the film better over the years, some color correction to hide a couple things, a hole under Bishop when his body's cut in half that is now digitally removed. So I mean. But I don't necessarily hold that against the film. I don't like that sort of after release changing. But in this case, it's not like they changed the entire subtext of the film like the Star Wars films end up inadvertently doing. Mm-hmm. My thing is, I go back to myself as a 13-year-old, so excited about Aliens. More excited than I think you could imagine. And I saw another film that summer that I wasn't nearly as excited about, called The Fly.
Yeah.
And The Fly put me through the back of the theaters. And by the way, I don't think The Fly is a perfect film either. I think its final act has some issues too. But The Fly, I think, is so much more solid. And I remember I wanted Aliens to be the best film experience of my life. And I didn't get that. And I didn't formulate exactly why for a long time. But as the years have gone by and I've looked at the film more critically as an adult, it's becoming more obvious that it's just not internally consistent with the film that preceded it. And that's a choice. Mm-hmm. So if for the people who are okay with that choice, it's not an issue at all. It is for me.
Fair enough.
So what about you? Where does this film fall in the ranking for you?
It's number 2. It's Aliens, and then there's a steep drop-off to me. I know you like 3. I just don't really care for it. I've only seen 3 the one time, so I really couldn't speak on it.
So I find it really interesting because you don't, because I'm very proud of the fact that during our debate, neither of us strawmanned each other's arguments at all, which that's really very rare in debate, period. So I think that's an admirable thing.
The problem coming into this, though, is I knew it had issues with the plot. So
right, and you knew that I'm actually a mood and atmosphere guy more than anything. But again, an action film is not going to have mood and atmosphere that I'm going to appreciate.
And
so that's the relevancy.
That's the only thing I could kind of grasp onto coming into it is that it's a completely different genre than the original film, and for what it did it very, very well, I thought. But anyways, you were going to say something.
Yeah, and I've lost my train of thought. I apologize. I'm not used to compliments, especially not talking about this. I think so. Oh, what I was going to ask. So, because they're different genres, Alien is basically a suspense film more than anything, and Aliens is really it's a alien siege movie. It's a Indian siege movie. It's about the Indians around surrounding a fort. That's really what the movie structure is at its heart. You start a fire in the fort at some point, and the cowboys got to get out. And so my question for you is, wanting something different, although I would argue that in some ways it's not, Would you want to see the series go even further into different genres? Would you want a hard science fiction aliens film? Would you want a comedy aliens film? Would you want it to continue to jump genre?
No, obviously I would not. Jim Carrey is the alien. I wouldn't want to see.
I might have a film to put below this one.
I mean, if we had to really realistically make an argument, I wouldn't have made a sequel to Alien. I
think we agree.
Yeah.
I think we agree entirely. I would miss out on Alien 3 if that was the case, and you'd miss out on this film. Mm-hmm. But it might just go back to what we always talk about. Leave it alone.
No, and that's what it is. I think they did, and that's where I come from defending this film, is to make a sequel to that movie. I didn't want to see that again, because you can't do it better than the original did it, especially not 7 years later. I think somebody brought up in the chat.
Yeah, I said 6, but it is 7. Definitely, yeah. So 79 and 86. Yeah,
I mean, that was just, it would have been suicide to try to go and make that movie again.
I think though there's still a horror film to be made, or at least a suspense or a siege movie with horror overtones in the material. I think you can add aliens and have them work as a hive, and that can still make that movie. I just feel like I wanted the plot to be more than just set pieces, and I feel like that's what this film is. It's a series of set pieces strung up, and how much you enjoy those set pieces is ultimately going to be how much you like the film. And it just on that level fails for me because I love narratives. I love mood and atmosphere. There's no room for mood and atmosphere really. Maybe when they first are walking into the hive, and then as soon as the gunshots start, it's kind of gone.
Now when they're walking into that hive is pretty dope. But you know what? I just want to get into your head here for just a second. Hopefully I'm not keeping you too long.
No, we're good. I anticipate this being longer, so.
What do you want? What is your favorite action film? Let's say, or what is a better? Because I had a movie I wanted to bring up that I think does atmosphere.
You want my version of Aliens? That is a movie, and it's funny who the director is.
Yeah,
Black Hawk Down. Replace the Somalis with aliens, and you have my perfect Aliens film.
I'd watch that movie.
Yeah, that kind of ferociousness, that kind of bitterness, that kind of emotional range. I'm there. And you could put Ripley in that situation. Again.
See, in the perfect Alien sequel, there's no Ripley for me. No.
Well, that's true too. That's true too. I was just talking from the commercial aspect, which they can't seem to get away from Ripley, which I really wish they would. The fourth film suffers hugely because Ripley's there.
But you know what? Honestly, the fourth film executed better would probably be a better sequel to the original movie.
You see, there's things like the cloning subplot that just really distract me because there's a film there. It's just not an alien film.
Yeah.
And also, they needed to get all the actors on board for a single tone because it's such a great cast, but everyone's in their own movie. Winona Ryder is not in the same movie as Brad Dourif is in that film.
I always forget Winona Ryder's in that movie.
Well, there's a reason.
I forget about that movie.
Her name is Her name is Call, by the way.
Call. So okay, again, trying to get into your headspace with action. Are you a Die Hard, Lethal Weapon, those kind of films? Are you that guy?
I like the original Die Hard. I love Die Hard with a Vengeance. Something about number 3 for me.
Die Hard with a Vengeance is one of my favorites.
Oh, I think it's superior to the original, and no one wants to hear that. I get it.
Right there, buddy. Right there with you.
I just like the fact that it's a wide open space, and it never feels like it. I love the fact that they did claustrophobia with a wide angle lens. That's so crazy that it worked.
Yeah.
And the Canada scene at the very end doesn't work. I'll be the first to say it, but the film up to that point works, and I think that's my favorite McClane. Broken, no longer trying, but still doing the right thing almost despite himself.
You throw Sam Jackson in there.
Oh, yeah. And Sam Jackson is dead wrong about a bunch of things, but you still love him, right?
Oh, he's great in that movie, dude. Yeah, that movie. Man, when people talk about Die Hard, they never talk about Die Hard with a Vengeance.
No. And see, that's a series where they made this the first sequel that was a direct, let's repeat the first film, and that doesn't work for me at all. Die Hard 2 is a painful watch for me.
God, Die Hard 2 is terrible. But,
isn't it?
Yeah, I don't. You probably know this, but none of those movies were ever started life as a Die Hard sequel.
You're right. Yep.
They were always tagged on with the franchise towards the end.
And of course, people don't realize that Die Hard itself is a sequel.
Yes.
The detective.
Who was it? They actually
Sinatra.
weren't they contractually obligated to offer him?
Yeah, because the original contract for the detectives was for a 3-film deal.
Mm-hmm.
So they were still, and of course he was what, I don't know, 68 or something at the time.
The studio was going, God, I really hope he says no to this.
although I kind of want to see that movie because is it real? I mean, think about this: Stallone is older now than Sinatra would have been for Die Hard.
Sinatra was not a Stallone 70. There's not near as many chemicals coursing through their veins.
But he was probably a better actor at the time.
Probably.
Sinatra was a damn good actor. People need to watch his work and realize. I mean, his Ocean's 11 sucks as a film, but he's amazing in it.
Somebody brought up that Die Hard is just Alien from the opposite perspective, and yeah,
that's true. That's always been what I would do with it. I to talk about that little mental game I play of what would you do if you were handed a franchise. My thing with Die Hard is I would always reverse it. I would have McClane with his team of security trying to take out one terrorist in a building. And because I think reversing the plot of the original would make a great bookend. I wish more series kind of understood that.
I really don't want to see any more Die Hards, though. God, I don't want to see any more.
Well, you're getting at least one more.
No, are they really going to do another one?
Yeah, so apparently they're doing. It's been floating for a long time, but Disney's trying to figure out how to release it under the 21st century Fox banner. But what do you do with it as an afterlife? Like they don't have their streaming service for the adult content isn't coming out till next year. Mm-hmm. So they need to have that in place before they launch this thing. So apparently they're using like a Godfather 2 structure where part of it's a prequel that's about John McClane's first case back in New York, and then the other half of it is old John McClane. And apparently it's the same case, just separated by 3 decades or something. I read a synopsis like forever ago.
That last movie was so bad that I was just like, all right, well, that was fun, but it's over.
I had Luca Bercovocci on the show the other week, and he did production work on that film.
Oh wow!
Because he's out of Budapest and they shot there.
I didn't even finish it. So.
Well, it does that scene from True Lies of hanging onto a fighter jet. It repeats it.
Oh God! That works in True Lies for me though. Like it's not gonna work in A Good Day to Die Hard though.
I agree. Actually, Rock Music Forever 90 says 16 Blocks is the real Die Hard 4. I agree with that. I agree with that entirely. I think that film is underrated. It never gets discussed. I think Bruce is actually a good actor still. He's just getting crap to work with, so he doesn't care. You hand that man a good role that he could actually get behind. I think you could have him back.
He's fun. I mean, I'll go to the store so much and I'll see a movie and it's just starring Bruce Willis.
For 5 minutes, yeah.
What the hell is this? I never even heard of this. It's like how Nicolas Cage would do anything they gave him as long as they paid him. I feel like we're going through something like that now.
I love how the horror genre becomes the hand-me-down for aging actors.
Yeah, how like he's just doing a ton of.
Yeah, you guys will accept me, right? It's kind of how like old dramatic actors started doing Taken ripoffs at a certain point because it worked for Liam Neeson.
I mean, before that, it worked for Charlie Bronson, right? Like that's the real template. Like,
well, yeah, it's like the Westerns were 20 years ago. You really want me to just shoot people in Chicago? Okay, whatever.
Oh, there's another. Was it Death Wish with Bruce Willis?
Not as horrible as I expected it to be. It worked for as its own light entertainment. It has that summer movie vibe to it. It doesn't feel like the original. I didn't think it was particularly horrible compared to some of the stuff. Like I'll tell you, this is a guilty pleasure of mine, and I do like that phrase. I think Denzel Washington's first Equalizer film is really very, very good for dumb fun. I think the second film is pretty awful.
I haven't even seen the second one.
Oh, I'd skip it.
I have it.
It's troubling.
I haven't watched it.
I love that. Denzel's one of my favorite actors.
He is good.
I wish he'd do more in the genre because we only have Fallen? That's it?
Dude, Fallen is great though and doesn't get talked about enough.
Fallen is a better version of Shocker than Shocker is. That's for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's true.
I mean, Horror Show will always be my shocker, but Fallen is better than Shocker.
Hang on, help me out here. I think I'm thinking of the right movie. It's the one with John Goodman, right?
Is John Goodman in Fallen? It's been years since I watched it.
I haven't seen it.
It's about a serial killer that changes bodies out with anyone he touches.
Yes, it is. It's the one with John Goodman. Yeah, John Goodman's really good in that movie too.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, no, he is in that movie.
Yeah, he's his partner.
Yeah. It's been years. But Denzel is actually one of my absolute favorites.
Frailty in that had almost the exact same cover in the video store.
That's funny.
Yeah.
So is that where you said you saw it many, many years after release. Is that where you saw Aliens? Was it a video store rental?
No. I bought it when it came out on Blu-ray. I bought the whole set. And I saw Alien. My parents actually owned a small video store when I was a kid.
Oh my God, man. I'm the most jealous 13-year-old ever again.
It was actually even cooler than that. It was a pizza place, and then the front of it was a video store, and then the other location we had was a pizza place and an arcade. So I had a pretty cool childhood.
Chris Lake Counselor 77 has a question for us. It's not really related, but I think we should answer it. It says, are you looking forward more to Halloween Kills or Ghostbusters Afterlife? I don't think we should do an either or here. Just tell me how you feel about both.
I'm really looking forward to, you know what? Actually, you kind of ruined Halloween Kills for me. I don't know if you remember
Sorry.
this. Don't want to get into it, but you may remember I had a certain issue with how this gentleman was going to escape this burning house, and I made a joke about it.
Apparently, the jokes were in the screenwriting process too.
Yeah. So that I'm less excited about it now. But it's a Halloween movie, dude. I'm always going to watch it. I mean, it's like I said, I don't want any more Friday the 13th. They release a Friday the 13th tomorrow. I'm going to watch it.
Yeah, me too. Aren't we incredibly dumb?
Yeah. I mean, I'm exactly what they're wanting, right? Like, I'm saying just be done with it already, but I got to see what they come up with. And Ghostbusters, man, again, I'm going to say I don't need any more Ghostbusters. I'm fine with where it was left out in 2. The one in 2016 never happened.
I've never seen it.
It never happened. There's no reason to see it. But I mean, I don't know what they're going to do without Harold Ramis. Like, I don't know where they're going to go with it. So, I mean, I will be watching it as well, but I wouldn't say I'm excited.
So the early press on that is that it's really very much a nostalgic kids movie. That it's not edgy like the original Ghostbusters at all. And that might be fine. It might work on its own and be its own thing, but kind of like I think the original Ghostbusters works because it is a cynical work, even for its time, but it has a heart to it. That's the weird thing about it. Like all the jokes are very cynical, but that movie manages, because of the actors, to really do something. But listen, and film starring kids are always difficult for me.
Mm-hmm.
Always. Even as a kid, I was always kind of just annoyed to watch kids on screen. I never transposed myself at all.
You didn't like the Goonies?
Goonies is not a film I like.
Whoa, dude. Now we can. You want to have debate? That's where it's at.
But okay, so I've seen Goonies exactly once, and it was in the 80s. I probably can't have that debate.
Goonies is the quintessential kids movie.
I used to procure the work print with Octopus for people because they used to ask me to do it all the time. But no, I'm going to see both films. Halloween Kills. I'm holding out this silver strand of hope that on screen it all works. Because in just the abstract, nothing I heard works, and it's going to be a very annoying film. A lot of people are going to like it because it's really violent, and the second act is really, really violent. But I've just reached that age. I mean, I turned 47 a couple weeks ago. I've reached that age where I've seen violence. You're not going to win me simply because it's violent or gory. It's got to have more than that.
Where did you put that 2018 sequel at in the rankings of those films?
It's just above Resurrection and the 2 zombie films, but nothing else.
We have a very different take on that. It's my note. It bounces between 2 and 3 for me.
Really?
Yeah, I love that movie.
Really?
I think that's the way to do a Halloween sequel. This late in the game, that's how to do it.
Well, I mean, I'm on record enough with Halloween. I've actually Halloween Kills and Halloween 2018. I've actually said that I don't really want to discuss the film a whole lot more because everything I've had to say, I've kind of gotten out there in the public, and people agree with me. Which at first, when I first, because I gave a review of that on my very first appearance on the Sausage Factory, and I was in the strict minority back then, and now it seems to be more like 50-50 or even maybe 60-40.
When that came out, I mean, what people were raving about it.
Yeah, which I think is insane. But
I genuinely liked it, and like it just hasn't really. I can see where it doesn't really need to exist. Don't get me wrong. But
if you liked 2018, I think you will like Kills. But I think if we talk afterwards, and we will, you'll say, yeah, it has problems, but I like it, And we all have films that's true of. Recently, Jay the Stingray just took up one of my suggestions. Watch one of my 90s guilty pleasures, a film that I absolutely will champion to anyone, called The Club. It's this amazing, very small direct-to-video Canadian horror film made on a small budget, but I love the movie. Can I defend it the way I asked you to defend Aliens tonight? No, absolutely not. So we all have those movies. My thing with Aliens is just that it seems like popular opinion just means mismatched to me to the film we have on screen. That's my issue, not yours, though.
I'm looking up The Club.
From 95, I believe.
94. Huh.
It has the great Kim Coates in it in a show-stopping, scene-chewing sequence, performance that is pretty great. It has, I think Andrea Roth is in it as well.
I like that.
Joel Weiner.
It's very early 90s video store.
I don't know if you can see it, but I have. You can't really. The poster signed by Kim Coates right there.
Dude, I love Kim Coates.
You know what? Hollywood does not know what to do with that man.
Did you watch Officer Down?
Yes, it did. Man, they should have had about $20 million to spend on that movie. It needed money.
It did. I liked him in it. But.
Although, were you shocked when you saw the Bloodshot trailer that you're like, oh my God, they remade Officer Down?
Yeah, I didn't know Bloodshot was a thing, so.
No. And clearly, like, that was probably they probably ripped Bloodshot off, but when they made the film, I was like, dude, this movie's been made before.
I saw it. The dude from Slipknot made it.
Yeah, exactly. It's Corey Taylor, right?
Sean.
Okay.
Yes, the clown.
Okay, that's right. I think that to the point kind of all tonight, I think it's okay to like films that are not perfect, and I think that's what I want people to really take away from this, is that I don't want to tell you not to like Aliens. I want you to like Aliens. I really do, because it's better for all of us as film lovers if things are successful than if they fail. With a few exceptions, like Fantasy Island needed to fail. But mostly you want things to succeed because it means more film comes. Mm-hmm. I just want us to stop pretending things are perfect and say that they're perfect or that they're like one of the best films when they have problems. It's okay to say, I'm a Friday the 13th fan. They're not great art. That's okay. And we shouldn't defend them. Are there reasons they work? Yeah, I have an autopsy series that talks about why the underpinning thematics in storytelling techniques work. I'm not saying there's no value to them, but I'm saying let's not overblow our fandom or how much we enjoy something into just how great it is. I think that's how we go down a road of, starting to get worse and worse films as Hollywood says, well, they dealt with it last time. We'll just double down on that.
Yeah. By the way, I don't think this is the most controversial thing you've ever said that you didn't like. I'm surprised that they did not burn you at the stake when you said that you liked the remake of Dawn of the Dead more than the original.
Oh, well, that's absolutely true. You know what? I've gotten so much support on that. It's not funny. I was shocked on that video when the chat just lit up. Now, there was a few that said, I'll never understand where you come from. But I got to say, we had probably 8 people immediately jump and say, yeah, I find it boring too. And I'm not a low attention span guy. I love slow burns, but there's something about that movie that never work for me. The way it works for other people.
I'm sure you got some other hot takes and some stuff. It is refreshing to see somebody not just go. There's a ton of people out there, and there's probably some, even probably in the chat right now, who say they like things just because it's the popular opinion.
I'm never going to read into people's motivations, but I get frustrated that I think online at least, because I'm not sure if I got like I love conversations like we're having right now because it was an honest conversation, right? Two people talk and looking each other in the eye, even if it's through a computer screen, is different. I think when people get to type or just talk into a screen, whereas people will watch it later, it's easy to just be the biggest fan of whatever for that 3-minute video you're making. And I never wanted to be that. I just had to review Pale Door. And Aaron Kuntz, was on my show and he made the film. And it was kind of like his baby. He had to fight to get the freaking thing made. And I didn't love the movie. I had problems with it. I reviewed it honestly, but positively. It's possible to do both.
Yeah.
But I just gave my upfront, honest opinion on it. And does that mean, am I looking for brownie points for being honest for people? No, because I could have lied. You never would have known the difference. Maybe you said Lauren has a bad taste on this film. Maybe. But I think it's important that we just have honest conversations. We bring other voices in and we start just being honest about what we want from the genre. Because if we don't start speaking up, we'll continue to get the crap we have been getting, which is more remakes, late in the day sequels. Are you excited at all that we're getting another Scream film?
Absolutely not.
No.
I am so done with it. I was done with that series after Scream.
Who would have? I mean, I don't even understand who the audience is for that anymore, besides people who just have fallen into loving the characters, which is kind of the soap opera syndrome. Right?
They're the worst characters. Like,
I think so.
Plus, like, what are the odds that this girl 5 different times gets chased by? I'm just like, if I was her, I'd be like, yo, screw it, stab me. Like, this is getting ridiculous. Who hates her? There are so many people in her life that just what did Sydney do? That's what we need to be asking ourselves. What did she do to turn this many people into cold-blooded killers?
I love how it's like the Scooby-Doo ending to everyone film in that series. It's like, but here's what really happened.
That's what kills it too. It's not like one like paranormal entity, okay, that keeps coming back and coming after her. I can live with that. I like Friday the 13th, okay? I can deal with that. It's the fact that there's all these different people who keep coming after her. This bitch must be terrible in everyday life. That's the movie I want to see. Like, what is she doing to these people off camera?
So, it's a series that I have no idea what I would do if I was handed, but I would do something really subversive that everyone would hate. Like, I would make a film and it would just be a straight drama and there'd be no killing in it, because at this point, this audience is going to show up anyway.
It's Dawson's Creek with a knife.
Give Courtney Cox cancer or something, and her husband, boyfriend has to stick by her side while she's. I mean, really make it a Lifetime original movie, because that's what it feels like to me anyway at this point.
Did you see the series by chance?
No, and I do love Bex. I don't necessarily love her politics, but I love the woman. Mm-hmm. So I probably at some point should check out the first 2 seasons. I don't think she's in the 3rd season.
3rd season is its own thing. I just saw the first 2 seasons. Passable. Like it's decent TV.
I'm not a big TV guy. I plan on when I retire, which will be never, I'll go back and watch all these series that I never, because I've never seen The Sopranos. I've never seen Lost. I've never seen The Wire. I've never seen The Shield. I've never seen any of this stuff. So my plan is that I want to have something at the end of my life to watch, because I'm assuming films are going to get even less relatable from here on out. So I kind of want to have something still left at that point. I watched my grandparents really fall into this really tragic state, whereas they turned on television, it was like they were watching a foreign language. So they'd end up watching reruns of game shows on the Game Show Network, because it was the only thing they could relate to. And I thought that was the saddest thing.
Man, I've never thought about it like that. But that is pretty sad, isn't it?
Well, think about television today. If you just turn it on any channel, not necessarily what you want to watch, and then make yourself, 40 years older.
Yeah, I can see that.
I'm glad they didn't have to see some of the things that are now so far out that I'm feeling like weirded out. I'm weirded out by how, we can't seem to escape the issues of the day in our bubblegum entertainment. We had issues of the day back in the 80s with sitcoms. We did. And once a year, there'd be a very special episode that dealt with them. The rest of the time, you didn't have to worry about, the day's topics like intruding and being like in our face.
You couldn't just watch TV and escape.
Yeah.
Now, I mean, yeah, and sitcoms are dead too, and that really sucks.
Well, comedy's dead.
Yeah.
Have you noticed that? What was the last big comedy to come out to theaters that was successful?
I don't know, probably something that Judd Apatow produced.
I'm thinking Date Night back January 2018 was probably the last thing that made some money.
Date Night?
Do you remember that? It was like
Different.
they went to a murder mystery and it turned out to be a real kidnapping plot or something. I don't know. I saw the trailer.
That was
I know.
Murder Mystery.
Oh, okay.
And that was a Netflix deal.
Oh, I thought it was in theaters.
No, that was it's Adam Sandler, straight to Netflix.
Oh, I don't think it was an Adam Sandler film. We might be thinking of different films because I hate Adam Sandler. That would have my antenna would have been all up in the wrong ways.
Did you like Uncut Gems?
Haven't seen it.
Jesus Christ, Lauren!
I can't stand him. I don't know if I can do it.
Listen, man. I mean, I'd gotten to the point. I loved old Adam Sandler, like from when I was a kid. Like I like that guy. But everything he's put out since 2000 has been garbage. Redeemed himself fully. Like that's my favorite film I've seen this year.
If I do it and I hate it, I'm coming after you, dude.
Give it a shot, man. Go in with an open. Have you seen Good Time by the same directors?
No.
With Robert Pattinson.
No.
Man, I feel like you would dig. I feel like you would dig both those movies.
And I feel like there's a part of me that feels like you're right because I saw the trailer for it and I saw the A24 symbol come up and I was like, oh man, this is challenging all my conventions now. But I don't know.
Give it a shot, my man.
So, you know what the big tragedy of this year is? We still haven't got Saint Maud.
Saint Maud.
That's A24's progressive horror film this year. It's check out the trailer if you haven't seen it. It looks stunning. It looks like Hereditary or The Witch or
this is where you're not gonna like me.
Uh-oh.
I don't like any of those movies.
Really?
The Witch, Hereditary. Like Hereditary, the head popping off thing that got me. But Midsummer, way too slow for me. Not saying they're bad films.
Midsummer, I was disappointed about, but mildly disappointed with. I just my expectations were through the stratosphere to the point where I couldn't go to the theater to see it.
Oh wow!
I couldn't bring myself to do it because I was like, if this disappoints, so I eventually saw it at home, and it did disappoint, but just not as much as I expected it might. So it wasn't quite the heartbreaker.
I'm just not wired that way. I know a ton of people are. Like I just can't. I can't invest in it that much, I guess.
I love Hereditary. I mean, I've said it a million times on this channel, but Hereditary's best moment, the one that just freaks me out the most, is just a character going to bed. Just a character going to bed, in the emotions swirling around you, you're like, I mean, it's. I love when films put you in a headspace that you could never have gotten any other way.
Are you talking about when he goes back in the house after all that happened? Leaves her in the car.
Yeah. It's such a great moment because it's something we've never seen or felt before on film.
That's what you're gonna do with that, but no, I mean, I can't tell you why. I just don't like. I'll probably never revisit it. I'm not gonna say it's a bad film, but it's just like it's not one I'm gonna go back to. Like I got everything out of the first viewing. Like it's just not rewatchable.
On a very different note, because they're talking sort of in the chat off and on about. Did you watch all the DC trailers that came out this week?
I watched the Justice League one, the Suicide Squad first look, and the Batman.
Did you watch the Wonder Woman 84?
No, just because I hate to be like this, but I'm just not that interested in it. I probably won't.
They're just the big entertainment news of the week, I guess. I'm not a mark for comic book movies particularly either. I think the Wonder Woman film looks awful. The Justice League looks like more of the same to me, to be honest with you.
I'm intrigued by the Justice League movie just because of how different it's supposed to be. Like that's I'd love to see a documentary on that, by the way. Like,
you'll get that. That's gonna happen.
I want a real one though. I don't want the one like they're gonna put out to coincide with the release. Like I want to hear like what happened there. Because you're talking about millions of dollars that were just wasted. And
are still going to be wasted, I think.
Yeah.
Because they're not done spending money on what has to be a sinkhole.
Yeah.
But the Batman trailer, I thought looked good. But and I kind of got some craps from some close friends about this, some of which are probably in the chat. I'm just done with Batman movies. Like, wow. I remember me saying that I don't need more Friday 13th. I really don't need any more Batman movies.
I mean, I still need Batman. I'm not super excited about Robert Pattinson's, upcoming film, but now that they've allowed like that universe to be open and there's going to be more than one Batman, I'm much more open to hearing different versions of that character. Now that I know I'm not going to be, all right, this is my Batman for the next 10 to 12 years. Like this is what I have to work with. Like, okay, well, I'm way cooler, and I think they're onto something. I'm much cooler with them trying something a little different. Because if you don't like this one, you might like the other one.
Yeah, I'm wondering if it's I mean, there's a long tradition of like what I call baton characters. So you have your James Bond or your Doctor Who, which I'm not particularly a Doctor Who fan at all.
Yeah, me either. So.
But you kind of understand like that whole continuity despite differences approach. But my thing with Batman is this seems like there's been so much over the last 30 years.
Oh yeah, man, since Batman 89?
Yeah.
For sure.
Just more than I probably need.
It's an interesting character, and there'll always be some Batman film in development.
Oh yeah. I agree with that.
I'm really glad that like big studios have recognized that people are at least somewhat intelligent and can keep up with, like, if you want to make a sequel to the original movie and there's 9 movies already, like we can, like, as long as you're like, hey, this is a sequel to the original, we can come up, like, we can figure that out. It's not going to be a deal breaker for us. Or like, there's 3 Batmans right now. We're smart enough to figure these things out.
I think that it's weird because they're putting a lot of trust in the audience in some ways, and they put none in other ways.
Yeah,
it's a weird thing.
So I'm saying what's happening right now is so against like the rules that I always felt were there, right? Well, you can't have 2 Batmans, because what if people won't go see it's just like, obviously that's not going to happen, but that's been the standard for so long.
I just think with all these legacy characters that I think I'm not telling, I believe, like, look, a studio wants to make a film, they should make a film. Yeah. But I think it's healthier if there's like at least maybe a 6-year gap between appearances of any character, unless it's something that's designed as like a straight trilogy that you're going to shoot back to back. I just think it's healthier to let some resetting happen, just to let all the opportunities for the character to really like settle, find out what you did right, what you did wrong.
Yeah.
I mean, at this point, if they were to announce a new Iron Man film with a different actor,
I'm done.
Exactly, I'm done too. It's like we've had enough of that. Not that it was particularly bad, but I've had enough of it.
I'm kind of done with like Marvel Cinematic Universe now, man. Like, at least for a while. Like, give me 5 years, right?
That's what I think they should have done. I think that those last 2 Avengers films were better than they had any right to be as films.
Yep.
And they should have taken that win and said, we'll see you in 6 to 8 years.
Yeah. And could you imagine what the opening night of, I don't care if it's Ant-Man 4.
Right.
What does the opening night box office look like if you give it that kind of time?
You can't even imagine. And that's where I think that, unfortunately, to go back to our favorite standby, once a resolution does come in the form of someone buying out all the rights to Friday the 13th from all parties, which is inevitable because business is business, we will get another Friday, and it'll have been long enough that it will have a huge release. And it won't matter the quality of the film. And that really scares me.
Friday 09 I think it was the highest grossing R-rated movie at the time, if I'm not mistaken.
And did it in 2 weekends because it was gone by the 3rd.
Yeah. Time to go to bed. Hang on 1 second. Ripley wants to say hi real quick. You gonna say hi?
Hi.
Hey, how are you?
He said hi. You going to bed? Kiss. Sorry.
No problem.
But yeah, Friday 09 was the most okayest movie in history for me.
I love the opening, whatever, 11 minutes of that film. I think they're like the perfect distilled Friday the 13th. And then the rest of the film fails to live up to that beginning. I still think it's better than some in the series. I don't like some people. I hated it. I don't understand what you hate, but
it had its moments. Like I loved the tunnel system it introduced, the traps. That was cool. Like that was a side of Jason you'd never seen before. Hated that second group of characters though.
I liked. The problem is they thought they were building characters like the fourth film. You could see that. You could see that was their template, but it didn't work. And part of the reason is there's this annoying habit in modern slasher films in particular to make as many unlikable characters as possible so that you cheer for their gruesome deaths. And that misses the point of a slasher film on a lot of levels. Like if we start voting too much for the killer, then the climax can never be satisfying. So, and maybe just because of our familiarity with Jason and Freddy and Michael and Leatherface, that's inevitable. I actually think that Texas Chainsaw 3D was smart to embrace it for their character.
I meant to ask you this, not to interrupt. Sorry.
No, go ahead.
Did you see the news regarding the Texas Chainsaw remake today?
Yeah, it's funny. I would have thought that would have reached me before it started going out other places. So I'm very interested to see how that plays out over the next few days.
It is, in my opinion, you'll probably agree with me. I don't care who makes it. You cannot a sequel, a remake, whatever, to any of the big ones like Texas Chainsaw, especially Friday the 13th, Nightmare on Elm Street. You cannot make them today. Especially Friday the 13th. You cannot. It just does not work today.
Well, the slasher sensibility was born of an age in which urban crime was spilling over to the suburbs. That's why they work. People were looking at the evening news and seeing crime that was unthinkable closer to home than ever. The human monster was closer at their door, and it was real. Today, we live in a different world. Like, there's a reason that the Purge movies work, because have you seen the streets at night?
Yeah.
Right? That's the world we live in today.
That first Purge movie worked.
I think they work. They just get so formulaic that it's like, whatever. But I think that's the world we live in, right? We can't go back to the single guy in an isolated, because you start to have to, again, contrive the plot to make that work. Cell phones can't work for some reason.
The cell phone problem is apparent in the genre entirely, though.
It's because we haven't progressed. So I've said this before, but there was a day when cars were not very abundant. Mm-hmm. People drove a place, and then that car went to go get other people, and you'd be without a car. So when cars became normal for film and fiction in general, I'm going to talk a little bit more about literature because it's, again, wheelhouse. But that was a big conversation at that time. Like, now people can just drive away at any point. How do we confront that? So we started to tell stories that simply driving away was not going to solve the problem, or we were lazy and we disabled the cars, which we continued to have right through the 80s. But the smart films made it that you couldn't drive away from this problem, right?
Yeah.
And so as it continued, phones. Well, if you can just call someone. Again, lazy films snipped the line. Smarter ones made it that a phone call was not going to solve the problem. We have to make that same jump today. What problems can't be solved by a cell phone call? And that's what's really scaring people today, because naturally, if you can solve a problem with a cell phone call, it's not even scary today.
No.
So we just got to get on board with where we really are and use the society we live in as the basis.
But that's what I'm saying. Like, you cannot get around those issues in the Friday the 13th movie that I want to see, right? Like, there's no way to get around it.
Yeah, and so a film like the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, the original, right, was really a film. I always say it's an apocalypse film because it feels like the end of the world, because there was so much social anxiety around that film. You can project anything from that time period into that film, and it works as a metaphor because it perfectly imbued that moment. That's why none of the sequels have really worked. Now, you can say, I love the second film. I love the third film. I don't know why anyone would. But you can't say it's not the same thing, right? Again, we're talking about that great film versus a film I love. which are different things.
Now, from that first film, do you ever get the feeling that that tone is accidental? I don't think Toby Hooper meant for a lot of that to come through.
I always wonder with all film,
Mhm.
how much is accident and how much is zeitgeist. Like, does the zeitgeist make it that you're culturally so like already submersed in the culture where it is at a moment that you can't make anything else, right?
Mhm.
And I think, especially like Texas in summer, a bunch of broke college kids and people who were no longer college kids, but we're still hanging out with college kids.
Yeah.
Your life seems to be going nowhere. There's a fuel crisis. The Russians are probably going to bomb us tomorrow. The president had to leave office because he was a crook.
Mhm.
The world's in a shit place. I'm going to make a movie about people at their worst. And I think there's just something to that. And you can't kind of do it cynically. You can't recreate it. Like, I know there's Rob Zombie fans out there. I'm sorry. Don't freak out at me. But here's the thing. Like, Rob Zombie wants to recapture the fears of days that have gone by mimicking style.
Mhm.
You can think it looks real cool, but you don't feel anything.
No. And he writes that kind of character well. And that happens to be the only kind of character that he can write, unfortunately.
Yeah, I mean, the whole right what you know trope is it has a value, but it's a very limited value. If you can't write outside your comfort zone, you're not much of a writer.
I mean, he's made 2 decent films. The rest are all garbage.
I haven't seen anything past his Halloween films, so I can't speak about anything in the last 10 years, but I'm not a fan anymore. I mean, I love his music.
Yeah.
I love his artwork. I think he has a great aesthetic. I think he's one of us. I would love to sit down and have, a long conversation with him about 30s horror, and I think he'd enjoy it too, but I don't really want to see another film.
House of a Thousand Corpses is like shockingly good, like looking back on it. Like, it's wild that somebody let that film be made. That was made by a studio. Like,
well, they didn't, but then they sold it because they didn't love it.
Oh, immediately they were like, "Oh, we can't put this up. The hell is wrong with us?"
Well, I think it was a celebration of a certain thing, and that's why it worked. But that kind of thing works once exactly.
Yeah.
Devil's Rejects was kind of this 70s throwback, Straw Dogs type of.
It was much different than House of a Thousand Corpses. So as much as it was similar, it was a road movie. I mean,
I also just think that, like, when we look back 30, 40 years about our favorite films, we have to realize that we're trying to capture something in ourselves more than we are in those films. When we talk about favorite, not best, again. And that's kind of the reason why the next Friday the 13th won't be a good film, or won't be as good as the original, or the next Halloween. Or it's just that we need new titles that make us feel what we feel today. That's what we need. And the argument that, well, you can take these old titles and rebuild them to make them today, I think misses the point of why the originals worked, which is that they, again, that submerged in the zeitgeist and the culture of the time. It's so important. To a degree, I think A24 have figured that out, but they're one company. Hammer did a lot of good this year with The Lodge, but they're one company. We need Hollywood in general to get it.
no, you're right. Unfortunately, for the next at least few years, we're not going to see anything.
So, what are your final words on Aliens?
I forgot we did an Aliens thing tonight. Oops.
We did Aliens.
Yeah. No, man. I think it's a very serviceable sequel to the original. It took the film series to a completely different direction, and it made it iconic.
I would say that I appreciate the love it gets from most of the audience base. I don't understand that love, but I don't need to. It's not a film for me. I thought when it was released that it was a film being made for me. I thought that more than anything, and I was proven wrong. But that doesn't necessarily mean that there's anything wrong with the movie. I think that it has its problems, but it also has its place in our culture. At this point, it is what it is, and you can have my share of it. That's not me saying you shouldn't enjoy it.
Fair enough.
So, Jonathan, I did put some links in the description below, but where can people keep up with everything in the Bombastics review world?
Find me at Bombastic Reviews here on YouTube, Bombastic Reviews on Facebook, Mr. Bombastic55 on Instagram, and of course, my biggest project, me and my buddy Corey do the S'mores Indoors podcast at s'moresindoorspodcast.com, and wherever you can find podcasts, we're on there. Lauren, I would love to extend an invitation to you to come on and talk to us about pre-60s horror. I think that would be that is an area that I am just completely dumb in, and I would love to get your take on it.
Send me an email. I'm sure we can work that out. So as for this channel, we will be back on Thursday night at 8 p.m. with another community show. We'll be discussing remakes that do well by their predecessor, but don't surpass them. As the second in our series, last week we did remakes that I consider better than the original. This week is ones that are on par or at least not an embarrassment. And eventually we'll do a third part, which will be the ones we really want to talk about, which is the films that just completely shit the bed on the original. So I hope you'll all join me on Thursday. We will have another matinee on Saturday, another literary guest. I know that there's a certain amount of you that absolutely love that. You're going to be very happy with this week's guest as well, and I will announce that on Thursday's show. In the meantime, everyone have a great rest of your day, and we will see you soon.
They make movies look bad.